Good morning, everyone. For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin in the United States. President Barack Obama is expected to take executive action next month to remove the 54-year-old American blockade on Cuba. White House officials have confirmed that Obama intends to use his broad executive powers to lift restrictions on travel, commerce, and financial activities. Obama also says he will be attending the Summit of the Americas in April along with President of Cuba, Raul Castro. It will mark the first time a Cuban leader is invited to the regional summit meeting. Obama's decision to normalize relations with Cuba has met stiff opposition in Washington. Congressional critics are threatening to block key elements of Obama's plan by withholding funding for a new embassy and blocking the appointment of an ambassador to Havana. Several lawmakers in both parties have made it clear that Congress will oppose efforts to restore diplomatic relations with Cuba. Also, next month, Washington is expected to revise and reissue final regulations regarding travel and exports to Cuba. And Americans will be able to use American credit and debit cards on the island. Moving on, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has rejected sanctions signed by U.S. President Barack Obama. Maduro called on the United States to respect Venezuelan sovereignty and refuse to be intimidated by U.S. aggression. The legislation was passed by the U.S. Congress last week authorizing sanctions against Venezuelan officials. The sanctions will deny visas and freeze assets of Venezuelan government officials. The president of Venezuela's parliament, Diosdado Cabello, has rejected the European Parliament's accusations against Venezuela. Cabello says Venezuela will not agree to extortion of any kind. Also, a committee made up of Venezuelan victims of violence carried out by right-wing opposition members last February rejected the European Union's resolution demanding the release of far-right opposition leaders. They presented the case of the 43 people who died during the violence. The situation in the Mexican state of Guerrero remains tense after the disappearance of 43 Ayotzinapa students. Federal authorities have rejected demands to cancel elections in Guerrero scheduled for next year. That prompted social organizations to protest against the decision. Hundreds of outraged protesters took control of various electoral buildings in Iguala. They also took over 21 municipalities. In Mexico City, supporters and families of the Ayotzinapa victims took to the streets again to continue demanding the students be found alive. The country of Bolivia was accepted as a member of Mercosur during the Latin American Trade Bloc Summit in Argentina on Thursday. Full membership is expected to be granted within the next 6 months. During the event, leaders took time to welcome Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff as the new president of Mercosur. She will replace Argentina's Cristina Fernandez. And we go to Colombia, where President Juan Manuel Santos says the Colombian government will not participate in the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia's indefinite ceasefire. Manuel Santos says he won't accept the rebels' demands until a peace deal is reached. FARC rebels have warned that the truce will last as long as they are not attacked by military forces. The peace talks began in November of 2012 in a bid to end a 5-decade-old conflict that has left over 200,000 people dead. The FARC delegation to the peace talks in Havana issued an apology on Thursday to the people of Bojayá, Colombia. They apologized for a 2002 incident where 79 people were killed. The gesture was accepted by a victim's representative. He requested that paramilitary forces also accept their responsibility for using the population as human shields. He also called on the state to recognize its role in not taking warnings about the event seriously. Colombian Senate President José David Name submitted an official proposal to President Santos recommending the government recognize Palestine as an official state. He says that the gesture will help facilitate peace in the Middle East. The Colombian government is the only Latin American country that has not recognized Palestine as a free and sovereign state. And in France, former Israeli President Shimon Peres says that a Palestinian state is necessary in order to have a democratic Jewish state. His statement came at the same day that the Israeli and U.S. governments dismissed the Palestine peace plan that was presented to the United Nations by Jordan. His remarks were made during a visit with French President Francois Hollande. Staying in the Middle East, the Iraqi Kurdish forces battling Islamic State militants have managed to open a key corridor so that thousands of people from the country's Yazidi minority can flee. Kurdish officials described the military operation to retake Sinjar as their biggest victory against Islamic State militants. The Kurdish Peshmerga forces were backed by U.S.-led coalition airstrikes. The Pentagon says 3 top IS leaders were killed in the airstrikes. The general in command of U.S. forces involved in the fight against Islamic State militants in Iraq and Syria said on Thursday he thought it would take a minimum of 3 years to achieve a turning point against the extremists. Now, the announcement as Secretary of Defense received approval to begin sending 1,500 more troops to Iraq on a training and consulting mission. Military sources in Syria reported today that almost 190 Islamic State fighters had been killed in the last 3 days in the northeastern region of the country.
Countries will contribute national capabilities on different timelines.
More on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. Hope you'll check it out. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great Friday and a great weekend.